and get back into Jimmy Butler and much more with our good friend Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, who joins us now on the River Islands guest line on a very, very big week. Monty, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing okay, man. What is your dust-settling initial reaction to everything the Warriors did this week?
Well, if Jimmy is healthy, he'll be fine, at least at first. His history, his pattern is that every time he shows up to a new team, he's really good, really good. It's the breakups that tend to be ugly. So if you're the Warriors and you want someone to give Steph a helping hand, Jimmy Butler's a pretty good choice for that.
What sort of a dynamic offensive game does he have? Because we've talked a lot about them needing three-point shooting, and he doesn't really have that. Is he a guy who can score at the other two levels? I know he gets to the foul line, but what do you make of his game, Monty, and how it will fit with what the Warriors try to do?
Yeah, he's kind of a point forward with a shot. His mid-range is really good. He gets to the hoop, gets to the line, like you mentioned. His three-point shot tends to come and go. It's funny how he can hit the big three-point shot, but on a regular basis, his three-point shot is just not very good. He's like a 30% shooter from three, a little over that. So, but I think his three-point shot is good enough to where defenses will respect it, and therefore they won't just like let him go out there and shoot open threes. So, in its own way, that has a certain amount of that can help the offense. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Buddy Hield is playing, even though his three-point shot's been missing for most of the last couple of months. Defenses still respect Buddy, so they follow him around. And other than Steph and Buddy, that's it for the Warriors as far as guys that defenses automatically decide we got to cover. Everybody else has to prove it, and Jimmy will, may get some of that. But I think that for the most part, he'll be able to help their offense because he's really good at orchestrating things on offense. That's the one thing he does, at least on offense, better than Wiggins, is that he can make plays for other guys. Wiggins is mostly a guy who does, he can get his own shot pretty well. Jimmy can get his own shot, but he can also set up other guys. And that's one of the reasons why he took some Miami Heat teams that were pretty good but not great to the finals. He's one of the reasons why they overachieved.
Monty, is this the deal the Warriors really, really wanted?
No. No. This was not plan A. What are we on now? Like plan L? Plan A was Paul George. Plan B was Larry Markkinen. Plan C was Kevin Durant. And so obviously the plan pie in the sky is Giannis. But this is plan, I guess, D or E, you might say. Because he's an impact player who comes in right now. He's a right now guy. Timeline fits with Steph and Draymond. He's 35. So I understand the move, and I also understand the skepticism around the league that I've heard over the last couple of days. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch. But he's a smart player, and it's a pretty good fallback option because Jimmy's one of the guys in this league who, when he walks into your locker room, he's a dude. There's a handful of guys like that he walks in and the temperature changes, and he's one of those guys. So I'm sure that Stephen Curry is extremely happy to have somebody to kind of, give him a little hand here because he's been trying so hard to carry this offense, and it has not gone well the past few weeks.
Yeah, and you can see last night where he shot it, 35 times, he couldn't do anything but shoot it. That's kind of the only option they had. As you look at the construct of the roster, not for this year, Monty, but going forward, what does this mean for Jonathan Kuminga? Because Jimmy's going to be making 55 or so, and you're starting to run out of dollars for JK.
I think the Warriors are at that point they're saying we'll figure it out. And the truth is that when there's somebody you definitely want to keep, you always find a way to figure it out. Now, does that mean moving somebody else? It probably does, but I think they're at a point where they're saying, let's see what we can do right now, and let's deal with the offseason in the offseason. The fact that they didn't pay Jonathan Kuminga last summer tells you that they weren't sure. A lot of his guys that were in the same draft class got paid. Some guys got max contracts, Cade Cunningham, Franz Wagner, Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley. These guys all got max contracts in the same draft. And Franz Wagner was chosen after Kuminga was. So the Warriors, they said, no, he's not a max guy, and he's not. And they also said, no, he's not a $40 million a year guy, and he's not. So they got to figure out exactly how far they're willing to go with him before they can really kind of proceed with the rest of the offseason. Right now, I think that's one of those things they're looking at as a back burner for right now. Things are so urgent now to where I think their energy is about what can we do right now on February 7th to make our team better.
Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, all over the Warriors, with us on Willard and Tibbs here on 95.7 The Game. Monty, there was that Brian Windhorst report at the beginning of the week that Jimmy Butler called off this whole idea he is not going to sign an extension with the Warriors. Then he did. So what changed, and do you think he's actually in his heart of hearts happy to be here?
Well, here's one of the things that changed is that there was no way for him to get to Phoenix. The Warriors wanted Kevin Durant to return, and Kevin said, no, I'm not feeling that right now, so let's not do that. And as I've been saying for the past few days, the most powerful man in the NBA also said he ain't going anywhere. That's Bradley Beal. And Phoenix wanted to move him. And Miami, their teams that wanted Bradley Beal, and Brad said, no, I'm going to sit right here. And my no-trade contract says I can do that. He and LeBron are the only guys that have no-trade contract, and he used his. And so the fact that he didn't want to be traded meant that KD wasn't going to be traded. It meant that Jimmy Butler wasn't going to go to Phoenix. So I think Jimmy figured out, okay, Phoenix is not an option. And the Warriors came back at him and said, look, I'm sure we can work out an extension for you, and we'll figure it out from there. And boom, here we are.
Yeah, and that's quite an extension. When you heard the details of it, Monty, were you a little surprised at just how lofty the number was for 2 years?
Well, I mean, that's what he can command. You know, I mean, they couldn't pay him $30 million. You know, he's way past that already, and he's not at the stage of his career where he can say, "Well, I'll take a giant pay cut." So that's what it took, and I think the Warriors felt a sense of urgency here. And they also knew that they didn't have many other options that were appealing. No KD, then where do you go from there? I think there was a time, 4 or 5 years ago when people thought, well, maybe Bradley Beal could fit with the Warriors. Well, that time has passed. They're not interested in Bradley Beal anymore. So, but now Jimmy Butler, the conduct he has, at some point he can be moved. And, maybe the pie in the sky dream of Giannis Antetokounmpo ends up here in a year or two. Who knows? Because I think a lot is riding on what the Bucks do in terms of Giannis's future.
It's interesting, Monty, to hear you say that it sounds like the Warriors still have, I don't know if flexibility is the right word, but like mobility on the trade market, because I sort of look at how hard it was to trade Jimmy this time and feel like it'd be even harder as they get older. Do you still think the Warriors have the ability in the next year to make more deals?
There's always a way, unless you're stuck in one of those aprons. There's usually a way. A good general manager, and Mike Dunleavy's done a pretty good job, I think, in general. Finds ways to offload people that don't fit anymore, or that their salaries don't line up anymore, and make it work. The Jimmy Butler deal wasn't easy to do, but they found a way to do it, and it involved 4 teams. So I believe, and the same thing that applies to me in football too, and even to a lesser degree in baseball, is that if there is someone you want on your team, there's usually a way if that person is willing to come to your team. And so they could have made it work for Kevin Durant, but KD said, I'm not feeling that right now. And Jimmy Butler came around and said, you know what? Let's do this because Miami.
Go on.
Yeah. Must have hit a dead spot there.
I am in no way done with that conversation.
No. There's always more with Monty.
Yeah. Like we got plenty more things that we want to go through with Monty. So we're going to work on getting him back right away, because from why Kevin Durant didn't want to come to, by the way, why is Steph not in the 3-point contest and any other deals?
Yep.
Like, let's get to my hypotheticals that I was throwing out there to see gauge what the Warriors' interest might have been in some of those other deals that they didn't make. So we'll get to all that with Monty. We'll get him back on here in a second.
And I'm just curious, like, where he sees the Warriors now after this trade. You sent out 4 players, you brought in 1. Does this appreciably change who they are? Now tied for the 10 seed right now. Is Jimmy Butler enough of a boost to make any real noise this year? I mean, I'm curious what his thoughts are.
I mean, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we're going to want to see him make his debut, which he will tomorrow night at the home of his very first team in the Chicago Bulls. All right, back out to Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area. Go ahead, Monty. You were saying.
What?
You were talking about Miami and Miami's unwillingness to capitulate to Jimmy Butler and his needs.
Yeah, well, Jimmy knew that Miami was no longer an option, and he wanted Phoenix, but Phoenix became not an option because KD didn't want to be traded, and Bradley Beal says, nope, I'm not going anywhere. So I guess you can say the market shrunk on him. And the Warriors were obviously out there looking for a big name, a big fish, or whatever you want to call it, and Jimmy fits that bill. They didn't bring him in, I don't think, to become a team leader or anything like that, like he was in Miami. But he can make players around him better. So I think with the Warriors, they're thinking, could we do better than Jimmy Butler right now? And the answer is no, based on who's available. And so they make the move because they feel like they're hamstrung. I mean, they've been a sub-500 team now for 2 months, and they obviously do not like that at all. And so now you look at Jimmy coming in, and it's hard to believe that they're going to be 500 all the way through. In fact, if they end the season at 41-41, that means that this trade did not help them. So this is a move that they believe will get them into the mid to high 40s, and therefore out of the play-in tournament. And when I talk to people around the league, yeah, there are some people who say, yeah, that's possible if Jimmy stays healthy, and there's others who are just skeptical about the fit. They still need, I think, shooting, and I still think that there are times when they look too small to compete in the paint. So this team is not perfect. It's not close to perfect, but it got better a little bit because you now have a guy who comes in with instant credibility and can help your offense kind of get on track. And right now, you watch the Warriors on offense, and you see too many times where teams just load up on Steph and say, who else is going to beat us? And nobody has stuff to do that. And Jimmy is a guy who I don't think they'll take that risk with.
Monty, I think all of us can guess at what some of the reasons might be, but you're tapped in. So I want to know your reasons as to why Kevin Durant didn't want to come back.
I don't think it has anything to do with Draymond. That's the popular, he didn't like Draymond. He and Draymond have been together numerous times since that happened. Hell, Draymond had him on a podcast, and that was, 3 years ago, I think now. So I think they would be okay. Kevin is a curious guy. I think he likes living life on his own terms. And when he came to the Warriors, he knew he took a lot of flack, but he did it anyway because it's what he wanted to do. When he went to Brooklyn, people were like, well, why are you doing that? Well, he wanted to play with Kyrie. Well, then that didn't work out, and he wanted to get out of there, and Phoenix sounded good to him. You got to remember that Kevin is a guy that he could have gone to any college he wanted to go to, and he grew up on the East Coast. He chose Texas. Why Texas? That's a fair question.
Right?
Why Texas? Of all the colleges you could have gone to, you chose Texas. He's a curious guy, and he likes to find out things and discover things. So I think Kevin wants to keep his options open. At some point, he'll want to get out of Phoenix. I don't know when that point is, but I can't see him staying there as long as his Suns are not in the championship picture. I think at some point he'll want to get out. The question is when and where, and who knows? Maybe a year from now, maybe less than a year from now, he might change his mind about the Bay Area.
Yeah, and we all were hoping that would have been a couple of days ago where he was, kind of itching to get out of Phoenix. One thing Mark and I talked a lot about is smaller moves, incremental moves. Cam Johnson is a name that's been thrown out. Nikola Vucevic. Was there any talk that you heard, any rumblings about those deals? Or after KD, was it just a focus on a big swing at Jimmy Butler?
No, Nikola Vucevic was definitely being discussed. but not so much in the days leading up to the deadline. Not this week. I think they kind of pivoted away from that and thought, he's going to help us, but he's not going to help us enough to where it really kind of gives us the bump we need. Vucevic is a 2010 guy, but he tends not to be his team. He doesn't make his teams better, and he's a numbers guy. He can shoot the three really well for a big. He's not a good defender. So there's pros and cons there, just as there are with Jimmy. There's pros and cons there, and the Warriors thought, you know what? Yeah, he could bring him in, but is that really going to make us much better? And I think the answer there is no. And I agree with that one. I think he would have made them incrementally better, but not enough to where, you break up things. And plus, the Bulls upped their asking price when they realized that Vucevic had some market value out there. And there were several teams who were talking about him, and the Bulls decided, we've been getting roasted for the LaVine deal, so what can we do now? Okay, our fans have been roasting us. And they said, okay, we're not going to get stung again, and that's why Nicola's still there.
Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area. Hey, it surprised some people today, Monty, when the NBA released the contestants in the three-point shooting contest for All-Star Weekend, and we didn't see Steph Curry's name on that. Do you know why he said no thanks?
I think I don't know why, because I never thought he was gonna play. I don't know. I mean, if he has a specific reason, but I think Steph is got a big week ahead. He's got a lot going on ahead, and I wouldn't be surprised if he lobbied to for Buddy, because Steph's been there and done that last year. You remember, obviously, he went out there with Sabrina Ionescu, and that was quite a show. And there was discussion about possibly he and Clay going against Sabrina and Caitlin Clark. That didn't happen. That's not going to happen. So I think Steph's plate is full enough. He's been carrying this team for quite a while. I think anything he doesn't have to do at this stage, he's probably not going to do.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just a little disappointed when, you've got it here in his backyard and Damian Lillard's going for a third straight and, Steph would get a third. And so kind of a head-to-head battle. I was excited for the entertainment part of that. As you head into the All-Star game here, Monty, what do you think the level of excitement is around the organization? And is it bolstered by the fact that they did something this week at the deadline?
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. The Warriors kind of captured the news cycle over the past couple of days. Once the Luka and AD thing, trailed off a little bit, and people are still talking about that, but that stole the weekend. And then you have the De'Aaron Fox deal. I mean, you got all these deals coming and going with the Kings and the Spurs and the Bulls. And we were joking in the office last night about how, wow, the NBA found a way to put the Super Bowl on the back burner this week. It's like all these things that have happened. And so, and Jimmy Butler is, that's if you look at the biggest trades of the week, that's one of them. Wiggins is a really good player, and he'll be good in Miami. And so, I think that the Warriors like the idea of having eyes on them, and they certainly got them right now, and they'll have them next week, obviously, on the entire Bay Area with the All-Star festivities happening on both sides of the Bay.
Okay, Monty, what's your thought? Are they one of the best 8 teams in the West now?
I think that remains to be seen. They haven't proved it, so therefore, to me, they're not. The record says they're 11th. They've been hanging around 10 and 11 and 9, 10, 11 for the most part, and that's outside the top 8. So until they get there, I can't put them in there.
That's a completely fair answer. Monty, thank you for both of the phone calls that you just took from us. Thank you.
All right, guys, take care.
Thanks,
all right,
Monty.
There it is. Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area. It's really good intel.
Yep.